I never thought it would come to this, sitting alone at my own dinner table on my 65th birthday, waiting for my family, and being left with nothing but an empty chair across from me. It was supposed to be a celebration, a moment where we would come together, laugh and reminisce. Instead, I was left staring at an untouched cake, the candles still burning down to nothing. I had spent days preparing for this evening. I cooked all of Elliot's favorite dishes, decorated the dining room with fresh flowers, and even bought a new dress, navy blue with tiny pearl buttons, just like he used to say looked so elegant on me. I had waited all day, eagerly checking the clock, hoping to hear the doorbell ring. But as the hours passed, my hope began to fade. No one came. I checked my phone for the 10th time, but still no calls, no messages. I called Elliot. Straight to voicemail. I called Romy. Same thing. Nothing. As I sat there, the silence in the house grew deafening. The air felt thick with disappointment. I couldn't understand it. We had always been a close-knit family. At least I thought we were. As the cake grew cold, I tried to tell myself maybe they were just running late, maybe there was traffic, or something had come up last minute. But deep down I knew that wasn't it. I knew something was off. My thoughts were interrupted by a buzz from my phone. I didn't know what I was expecting, but certainly not a photo of Romy and Elliot laughing together on a luxury cruise, posted just a few hours ago. They were smiling, their faces lit up with joy. In the caption it said, "Living our best life on the Mediterranean." My heart sank. My own family, my son and daughter-in-law, had planned a vacation and I wasn't even invited. I wasn't just excluded from their fun, I was forgotten. I stared at the screen, unable to tear my eyes away from the image. I should have been there with them celebrating together, but instead I was sitting alone, wondering why I wasn't good enough to be part of their lives anymore. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Elliot. "Sorry, Mom. We forgot to mention we'd be out of town this week. Happy birthday, though." Happy birthday. That was all he could say. I felt the sting of it. The coldness in his words was sharp, cutting through me like a blade. I sat there frozen. I wasn't angry. I was too shocked to be angry. But the hurt was real. It was like a deep ache in my chest that I couldn't shake. I tried to hold it together. I couldn't let them see how much it hurt. I didn't want them to know they had broken me. But I had to face the truth. They didn't care. I was just an afterthought to them. The cake, the dinner, the decorations, all of it seemed meaningless now. I stood up slowly, the silence of the house pressing down on me. I started to clean up, taking the cold plates and stacking them on the counter. I wrapped the untouched cake in plastic and put it in the fridge. I turned off the candles. I cleaned the dining room in a haze, barely feeling the movements of my hands as I went through the motions. I was numb. I didn't cry, not then. I couldn't. But the weight of their absence, the absence of any care or love from the people I had given everything to, it sat on my chest, heavy and suffocating. That night I went to bed alone. I lay there staring at the ceiling, the quiet of the house wrapping around me like a shroud. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. My mind kept racing, trying to make sense of everything. How had we gotten here? Why was I being treated like this? I thought of all the years I had spent raising Elliot, of all the sacrifices I made for him and his family, and this was how they repaid me. I had spent my life caring for them, but when I needed them they were nowhere to be found. I had given everything to them, but now it felt like I had nothing left. Nothing but an empty house and a broken heart. The next few days passed in a blur. I went through the motions of my daily routine, as if everything was normal, but nothing felt normal. I woke up each morning with the same heavy heart, the silence in the house louder than ever. The empty chair at the dining table felt like a constant reminder of everything I had lost. I tried not to think about the night of my birthday, the pain, the loneliness, but it kept creeping in. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, something fundamental in my relationship with Elliot and Romy. They had always been my family. I had dedicated my life to them, but now it felt like I was no longer part of their world. They had cast me aside as if I were nothing more than an inconvenience. I wondered how they could do this to me. How could Elliot, my own son, treat me like I didn't matter? He used to call me every week asking about my health, checking in to see how I was doing. But now it was as if I no longer existed. I hadn't heard from him since that text message on my birthday. It was as though he had forgotten I was even alive. The pain of being ignored was almost unbearable. I tried to stay busy to distract myself from the ache in my chest. I spent my days cleaning, organizing, doing anything to fill the emptiness that had taken over my life. But no matter how much I worked, the void was still there. I couldn't stop thinking about how Romy had treated me, how she had calmly told me to pack my bags and leave, as if I were nothing more than a stranger. She had always been distant, but this was different. This was cruel. I had always done my best to be a good mother-in-law to her. I welcomed her into our family with open arms, always making sure she felt at home. I had done everything I could to make her feel loved and accepted. And yet, she repaid me by throwing me out, telling me to leave without a second thought. I couldn't understand it. I had tried to be patient, to give them space, to let them live their lives without interference. But now it felt like they were taking everything from me. My home. My family. My dignity. I sat in the living room, staring at the pictures on the walls. Each frame held a memory of a time when things were different. When Elliot was a little boy, when he would come running to me for comfort, when he would tell me he loved me before going to bed. I could still hear his voice in my mind, but now it felt like that voice was gone. He had grown up, moved on, and left me behind. And I wasn't sure how to feel about it. I wasn't angry. No, I was beyond that. I was hurt. I was disappointed. But more than anything, I was heartbroken. I had always believed that family was everything. That blood was thicker than water. But now, I was questioning everything I had ever believed in. I knew that Romy and Elliot had been talking behind my back. They had been making plans to sell the house, to get rid of me, to force me into a situation where I had no choice but to leave. I could feel it in the air, the tension that had been building for weeks. They were no longer pretending. They were done with me. I couldn't help but wonder what had changed. Had I done something wrong? Had I missed a sign? I racked my brain trying to remember the last time we had been close, the last time Elliot had seemed to care. But it was all a blur. It felt like everything had happened so quickly, like I had been blindsided by their sudden coldness. I knew deep down that they were no longer the people I had once known. They had become strangers to me, and I was forced to accept that. I was forced to accept that my son, the boy I had raised, was no longer the person I had loved. I had spent my life building a family, creating memories, making sacrifices, and yet now I was being cast aside. The thought of moving out, of leaving the home I had shared with my late husband, was unbearable. It was more than just the house. It was everything. Every corner held a memory. Every room had a story. It was where I had spent years building a life with Noel, my husband. It was where we had laughed, cried, celebrated, and grieved together. And now it was being taken from me. I sat in the living room, staring at the empty space, trying to come to terms with the fact that my family was gone, that they had made their decision, and that I was left with nothing but memories. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know how to fix this. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going to give up without a fight. I wasn't going to let them take everything from me without at least trying to stand my ground. I had spent my life giving to them, and now it was time to take something back. I wasn't sure what that would look like, but I knew I had to do something. I had to find a way to make them see what they were doing to me, to make them understand that family wasn't just about taking. It was about giving. And right now, I was the one who had been left behind. The days continued to pass slowly, and as much as I tried to fill the void, the silence only grew louder. The house felt emptier with every passing hour. The memories of Noel still fresh in my mind, but now they were tinged with sorrow and a growing sense of betrayal. I had always believed that family was supposed to be there for each other, that no matter what, we would stand by one another through thick and thin. But now I wasn't so sure. It seemed like I had been a fool to think that. Romy and Elliot had made their decision, and I was nothing more than an inconvenience to them, a burden they no longer wanted to deal with. They had been so careful, so calculated in their actions, that it was almost as if they had planned this from the start. I could feel it in the air, the coldness between us, the distance that had grown over the years. I had seen the signs before, but I had refused to acknowledge them. I had tried to tell myself that it was just a phase, that everything would get better, that they were just busy. But now I knew the truth. They didn't care. They didn't want me around anymore. It was as if I had never mattered to them at all. I had spent so many years giving everything to them, sacrificing my own needs and desires for their happiness, and this is how they repaid me. I had always tried to be a good mother, a good mother-in-law, and a good grandmother. I had supported them through thick and thin, always there when they needed me, always putting their needs above my own. And yet, when it came time for me to ask for something as simple as a family dinner, I was ignored. When I reached out for help, I was cast aside. It wasn't just the dinner that hurt. It was the realization that they had never truly seen me, that all those years of love and sacrifice had meant nothing to them. I began to feel like I was invisible, like I no longer existed in their world. The thought of leaving, of being forced out of my own home, was more than I could bear. This house, this place that Noelle and I had built together, was all I had left. It was where we had spent so many years of our lives, raising our children, building our dreams. Now it was just a reminder of everything I had lost. I couldn't let them take that from me. But what could I do? I had no power, no leverage. They had already made up their minds. I couldn't force them to care, and I couldn't make them see the pain they were causing. I tried to hold on to the memories of better times, but they were slipping away from me, fading into the past. I thought about the times when Elliot was a child, when he would run to me for comfort, when he would curl up on my lap and tell me about his day. I thought about the family holidays, the laughter, the warmth we used to share. It all seemed so far away now. I wondered where it had all gone wrong. How had we gone from being a close-knit family to this? How had I gone from being loved and cherished to being abandoned and discarded? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had been fooling myself. I had been so desperate to hold on to the image of the perfect family that I had ignored the cracks in the foundation. I had ignored the way Romy had pushed me away, the way Elliot had become more distant with each passing year. I had ignored the signs because I wanted to believe that things could get better, that they would come back to me. But now I knew the truth. They weren't coming back. They had already moved on. I was the one left behind. I spent the next few days in a haze, my mind spinning with all the emotions I couldn't seem to process. I didn't know what to do next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them win. I wasn't going to let them take everything from me without a fight. I had spent my life caring for them, giving everything I had to make sure they were happy, and now it was time for me to do something for myself. I wasn't going to sit back and let them push me out of the life I had built. I was going to fight for what was mine. It was time to take control of my own destiny, to stop letting them dictate my life. I wasn't going to let Romy and Elliot take away my home, my memories, my dignity. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. I had spent too many years putting them first, and now it was my turn to take care of myself. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it, but I knew I had to start somewhere. Maybe I didn't have the power they had, but I had something they didn't. I had the will to fight. And that was something they couldn't take from me. The days that followed were a mix of disbelief and quiet resolve. I couldn't stop thinking about the life I had built with Noelle, the home we had created together, and the family we had raised. Yet now that same family had turned their backs on me, and I was left to pick up the pieces of a shattered existence. It wasn't just the house that felt lost, it was everything. The warmth, the connection, the bond that we once shared. It was all slipping away, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I could feel the walls of the house closing in on me, the weight of the silence pressing down on my shoulders. I had always been the one to take care of others, to make sure everyone had what they needed. But now I was the one in need, and there was no one left to help me. The thought that my own son and daughter-in-law could do this to me made my stomach churn. I had given them everything. I had sacrificed so much for them. But now they were treating me like I didn't matter, like I was nothing more than a burden. I couldn't understand it. How had we gone from a family that cared for each other to this cold, distant, calculating version of what we once were? I had always believed that family was everything, that no matter what, they would be there for you. But now I felt like I had been foolish to ever think that. I had been so focused on keeping the family together, on making sure everyone was happy, that I had ignored the signs, the subtle shifts in their behavior, the distance that had grown between us. But now it was too late. The damage had been done. My heart ached as I thought back to the times when Elliot was younger, when he would run to me for comfort after a bad day at school, when he would tell me everything that was on his mind. Those moments seemed like a lifetime ago, and now I could hardly recognize the person he had become. It was as if the love he once had for me had faded, replaced by something else, something cold and distant. Romy had always been a bit distant, but this was different. This wasn't just distance. This was deliberate. I had welcomed her into our family with open arms, treated her like a daughter, and this was how she repaid me. I had always tried to be kind to her, to make her feel at home, but now I was beginning to see the truth. She had never cared for me. Not really. I wasn't sure when it started, when things began to shift, but I could feel it now. The way she looked at me, the way she spoke to me, it was all different. She wasn't the same person I had once welcomed into our family. And Elliot? He was no better. The text he had sent me on my birthday, so cold, so detached, was the final straw. I didn't even know what to say to him anymore. He had become a stranger, someone I didn't even recognize. It hurt more than I could put into words. I had spent so many years doing everything I could for him, and now he was treating me like I was invisible. I spent my days wandering around the house, trying to find something to do to fill the emptiness. The house was quiet, too quiet. Every room felt like it was closing in on me. I tried to occupy myself with chores, cleaning, organizing, anything to keep my mind from spiraling. But nothing worked. The loneliness was suffocating. I hadn't heard from Elliot in days, and I hadn't seen Romy either. I didn't even know if they were still living here or if they had already moved out. The thought of losing this house, of losing the last connection to Noelle, was almost more than I could bear. But I couldn't let them take it from me. I had spent too many years building this life, this home. I couldn't let them just take it away without a fight. I didn't know where to start, but I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let them push me out. I had to stand my ground, even if it meant standing alone. I didn't have much, no money, no power, but I had my will, my determination. I had spent my life taking care of everyone else, but now it was time to take care of myself. I wasn't going to let them destroy everything Noelle and I had worked so hard for. I wasn't going to let them win. I took a deep breath, standing in the living room, looking at the walls that held so many memories, and I made a promise to myself. I would fight. I would fight for my home, for my dignity, for the family I had once known. I would make them see me again. I would make them understand what they had done. It wouldn't be easy, and I wasn't sure where it would lead, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going down without a fight. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. I wasn't just the woman they had abandoned. I was strong. I was a fighter. The following days were filled with an odd kind of silence. The house was quiet, but not in the peaceful way I once knew. It was a silence that weighed heavily, thick with the absence of people who should have been there, and the absence of the love I thought I had earned. I had been a mother, a wife, a grandmother. I had sacrificed for my family for so long, always putting their needs before my own. Yet here I was, alone, abandoned by the very people I had given everything for. The silence in the house was suffocating, and no matter how much I tried to keep myself busy, nothing seemed to fill the void. I thought of all the years I had spent building this home, this life with Noelle. I had been proud of what we had created together, the love we had shared, and the family we had raised. Now all that was left were memories, memories that were quickly fading. I had always believed that family would always be there, that no matter what, we would support each other. But I was wrong. Romy and Elliot had made it clear that I was no longer needed in their lives. I couldn't help but feel like I had been discarded, like I was nothing more than an inconvenience to them. But no matter how hurt I was, I refused to let them see how much they had broken me. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. Instead, I decided it was time to take control of my own life. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could control what happened next. I wasn't going to let them push me out of my home, out of my life. This was the house Noelle and I had built together, and I wasn't going to let them take it from me without a fight. I started making plans quietly behind the scenes. I reached out to some old friends who could help me understand my legal rights. I started looking into the paperwork that Noelle and I had signed when we bought the house, trying to figure out where I stood. I wasn't sure what I would find, but I knew I had to take the first step. I wasn't going to sit idly by and let them walk all over me. I had spent too many years being the one who gave, who sacrificed. Now it was time to take something back. As I sat in the living room going over the documents, I felt a small flicker of hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough. For the first time in days, I felt like I was doing something. I wasn't just sitting around waiting for them to tell me what to do anymore. I had a plan. I was going to fight for what was mine. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something else. I wasn't just fighting for the house. I was fighting for myself. I was fighting for my dignity, for my right to be treated with respect. I had spent my life putting others first, but now it was my turn. I wasn't going to let anyone make me feel small, no matter how much they tried to push me aside. I spent the next few days gathering my strength, preparing for what I knew was going to be a difficult battle. I wasn't sure how it was all going to turn out, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let them win. I wasn't going to let them take everything I had worked so hard for. I wasn't going to let them take me. As the days went on, I started to see a change in myself. The woman who had once been so passive, so eager to please, was starting to fade. In her place was a woman who was ready to stand up for herself, who was no longer willing to let others walk all over her. And that woman was strong. I knew that no matter what happened next, I would be okay. I didn't need anyone's approval, especially not from the people who had shown me nothing but cruelty. I had everything I needed within myself. All I had to do was remember that. One evening as I sat at the kitchen table, I heard a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I stood up cautiously, wondering who it could be. When I opened the door, I was surprised to see my old friend Martin standing there. Martin had been a friend of Noelle's for years, and although we hadn't spoken much since Noelle's passing, I had always trusted him. He smiled warmly as I invited him inside. "I wasn't sure if you'd be home," he said, taking a seat at the table. "I've been trying to reach you." I frowned, unsure of what he was talking about. "What's going on?" I asked. Martin hesitated for a moment before answering. "I'm sorry to bring this up, but I think you need to know something. There's been some talk about the house." My heart skipped a beat. I could feel the tension building in my chest as I waited for him to continue. "What kind of talk?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been hearing things," Martin said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "It's about Romy and Elliot. They've been making plans to sell the house, to move you out." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I had known something like this was coming, but hearing it out loud made it feel all the more real. "They've been plotting behind my back," I said, my voice shaking with anger. Martin nodded. "They've been talking to lawyers, trying to figure out how to get you out of here. They don't want you here anymore, Loretta. But I think you should know that you still have options. You don't have to let them take everything from you." His words hit me like a punch to the gut, but they also gave me the strength I needed to keep going. I wasn't going to let them win. I wasn't going to let them take what was mine. I had a fight ahead of me, but I wasn't backing down. I would make sure they saw just how strong I really was. I spent the next few days in a haze of determination and quiet planning. It was as if the shock from the revelation about Romy and Elliot's plans had given me a new sense of purpose. I wasn't just going to sit back and let them take everything from me. I wasn't going to let them strip away the life Noelle and I had built together. I spent hours going through old documents, looking for anything that could give me an edge. It felt like a strange sort of battle, one I never imagined I'd be fighting. But now I was ready. The house had always been more than just walls and a roof to me. It was where my life had happened, where we had raised our children, where we had laughed and cried, where we had dreamed. And I wasn't about to let anyone take that from me. My hands shook as I carefully sorted through the paperwork. There it was, the deed to the house, signed by Noelle and me. The mortgage documents, all the payments we had made together. Everything was in order. I wasn't sure what kind of plan Romy and Elliot had, but I was certain they didn't have all the facts. I was prepared to fight for what was rightfully mine. I wasn't just fighting for the house. I was fighting for my dignity. For years I had put my family first. I had made sure they had everything they needed, even at the expense of my own well-being. And now I wasn't going to let them trample all over me. I wasn't going to let them erase me from the life I had built. After a long, exhausting day of sorting through the papers, I called Martin again. He had been a lifeline for me, offering advice, helping me understand my rights. When he answered, his voice was calm but concerned. "Loretta, are you sure about this?" he asked, his tone cautious. "I know this is hard, but you need to be prepared. They're not going to give up without a fight either." "I'm ready," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was racing. "I'm not going to let them win. This is my home. I've worked too hard for it, and I won't just let them take it from me. Martin was quiet for a moment before he spoke again. All right. But you need to be smart about this. You're going to have to make sure everything is in order. Get the legal documents, check the finances. You don't want to leave anything to chance. I nodded even though I knew he couldn't see me. He was right. I had to be thorough. I couldn't afford to make any mistakes. Over the next few days I visited my lawyer, went over the details, and made sure that everything was in place. It was exhausting both physically and emotionally, but I knew it was the only way to protect myself. I wasn't going to let Romy and Elliot push me around any longer. They had underestimated me. They had assumed I was weak, that I wouldn't fight back. But they didn't know me as well as they thought. I had spent my life raising a family, building a home, and I was not about to lose it all without a fight. By the end of the week, I had gathered all the evidence I needed. The papers were ready. I was ready. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going down without a fight. As I sat in my living room, looking around at the house that had been my sanctuary for so many years, I realized something. This house wasn't just a building. It was a symbol of everything I had worked for, everything I had built. And no one, not even my own flesh and blood, was going to take that from me. I could feel the determination rising within me, stronger than it had ever been before. I wasn't just fighting for a roof over my head. I was fighting for the years of memories, the love, the sacrifices, everything that had gone into making this house a home. I wasn't going to let them take that away. When Elliot finally showed up at the house, a few days later, I was ready. He didn't know it, but he was walking into the storm he had created. I had been calm, patient, but now the time for patience was over. I was done being the quiet, submissive woman they thought they could walk all over. Mom, Elliot said, his voice unsure. I've been thinking about everything. I know this has been hard on you, but I think we need to talk. I didn't let him finish. No, Elliot, I said, my voice steady, my resolve hardening. You've made your decision. You and Romy have already made up your minds. But I'm not going to let you do this. I'm not going to let you take what's mine. He looked at me, confusion and something else, guilt maybe, in his eyes. Mom, what are you talking about? I know everything, Elliot, I said. I know you and Romy have been planning to sell the house. You thought you could just push me out, didn't you? You thought I wouldn't notice. But I've been preparing. I've got the papers, I've got the proof. This house is mine, and I'm not going anywhere. He opened his mouth to speak, but I raised my hand, cutting him off. No more lies, Elliot. No more games. I've given you everything. I've spent my life taking care of you. But now it's time for me to take care of myself. I'm not going to be treated like this anymore. He stood there, speechless, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. I didn't feel bad for him. Not anymore. I had given him everything, but now it was my turn. I had spent my life making sure others were taken care of, but now it was time to take care of myself. This fight wasn't just for my home. It was for my dignity, for my sense of self-worth. And no one, not even my own son, was going to take that from me. I had spent so many years sacrificing for my family, and now I realized I had to fight for what was mine. The moment I confronted Elliot, something in me changed. It wasn't just the house anymore. It was my life, my identity, everything I had worked for. I wasn't just fighting for a roof over my head. I was fighting for my dignity, for the respect I deserved. I watched Elliot stand there, his mouth opening and closing as if searching for the right words, but none came. I could see the shock on his face, but I wasn't going to let that affect me. This was the moment I had been waiting for. This was the moment when I would take control of my life. You have no idea what it's been like, have you? I said, my voice calm, but with a sharpness that cut through the tension in the room. I've been giving everything to you and Romy for years. All I ever wanted was to feel like I was part of this family. But you've made it clear that I'm not. You've already made up your mind about what's going to happen to me. But I'm telling you now, that's not how this is going to go. I could feel my chest tighten as I spoke. For so long I had held everything in. I had been patient, waiting for things to get better. But now I realized that they weren't going to get better. Not unless I took action. You think I'm weak. You think I'm just some old woman who will just accept whatever you do to me. But you're wrong. I stepped closer to him, my eyes locked on his. I'm not going anywhere. This house is mine and I'm going to fight for it. Elliot looked at me stunned. His expression softened, but I didn't care. I had to stand my ground. For once I had to be the one who was heard. Mom, please, he started, but I didn't. Let him finish. Don't please me, I interrupted, my voice steady. You don't get to do this to me. You don't get to make all the decisions without considering how I feel, without thinking about what I've sacrificed for this family. You can't just take everything I've built and expect me to go quietly. Elliot's face shifted. He didn't know what to say. His eyes darted around the room, avoiding mine. I could see the guilt written all over him, but it was too little too late. This is your house, yes, he said, his voice low. But you have to understand, Romy and I. We've been under a lot of pressure. We're trying to move on, to start a new chapter. I laughed bitterly. A new chapter? That's what you call it? Throwing me out of my own home? Moving on by erasing me from your life? My heart ached, but I wasn't going to let him see that. You're not just trying to move on, Elliot. You're trying to push me out. You've been planning this for months, haven't you? But I'm not going to let you. I've spent my life working for this family, making sure everyone was taken care of, and now it's time for me to take care of myself. I paused, taking a deep breath. I could feel the anger building inside me, but I kept it in check. I couldn't afford to let my emotions get the best of me. Not now. Not when I had come so far. I don't care what Romy says or what you think you need to do. I'm not leaving. You want me gone? You'll have to fight me for it. And trust me, you won't win. Elliot opened his mouth, but no words came out. I could tell he was struggling with what to say, struggling with the realization that things weren't going to go the way he thought. But I wasn't interested in his excuses anymore. I had heard enough. You and Romy think I'm just going to roll over and let you take what's mine, but I'm not. I'm not some old woman you can push aside. I've spent my life raising you, loving you, and making sure you had everything you needed. And now when I need you, you're nowhere to be found. Well, I'm done. I won't let you take this from me. I won't let you take me from me. The room fell silent. I could hear my own heartbeat, my own breath steady and strong. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control. I wasn't the victim anymore. I wasn't the woman who had been cast aside. I was the woman who was taking her life back. I'm sorry, Elliot said after a long pause, his voice softer now. I didn't realize. I didn't know you felt this way. Of course you didn't, I said, the bitterness returning to my voice. You've been too busy with your own life to notice anything else. But I'm done pretending. I'm done playing along with your little game. I turned away from him, my heart still racing but my resolve stronger than ever. I had made my decision. I wasn't going to be the quiet, accommodating woman anymore. I wasn't going to let them dictate my life. It was time for me to take control, to stand up for myself, and to make sure they knew that I wasn't someone they could ignore. I walked out of the room, my head held high. I didn't know what the future would bring, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let them take everything from me without a fight. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had the strength to win. I didn't expect the fight to be easy, but I also didn't expect it to be this hard. As the days passed, I watched the situation with Elliot and Romy unfold. And with each passing day, I felt like I was getting closer to the truth, but further away from the family I had once known. It had been weeks since I confronted Elliot, and though he hadn't outright given up, I could see that he was beginning to feel the weight of the decision he had made. There was a tension between us now, something unspoken but very much present. Romy, on the other hand, was a different story. She hadn't said much to me after that day. In fact, she avoided me altogether. It was as if she were pretending I didn't exist. She would look at me with a cold, detached expression whenever I crossed her path, but she never spoke. I hated the way she treated me, so dismissive, so cruel, but it was a reality I had to face. I couldn't change her actions. All I could control was how I responded. And I wasn't going to let her or Elliot push me out. I wasn't going to let them win. My lawyer had been a huge help. Over the course of the next few weeks, I gathered all the legal documents, met with him to discuss the next steps, and started to prepare myself for the fight ahead. It wasn't easy, but I knew I couldn't let them take what was rightfully mine. The more I thought about it, the more I realized something important. I wasn't just fighting for the house as much as that was part of it. I was fighting for respect. I was fighting for the years I had spent raising Elliot, for the sacrifices I had made, for the love I had poured into my family. I wasn't going to let them strip that from me. But as I prepared to face them, I found myself questioning whether it was worth it. Was I making a mistake? Was I just clinging to something that had already slipped away? But every time those doubts crept in, I thought about Noel. I thought about how he would have wanted me to stand up for myself, to not let anyone push me aside. Noel had been my rock, my partner in everything. And though he was gone, I could still hear his voice in my head, telling me to be strong. I had always tried to do right by him, to honor his memory. And now the best way to do that was to stand firm, to fight for the life we had built. It was the least I could do for him, for me, for everything we had shared. The day I finally stood face to face with Elliot again, I wasn't sure what to expect. He had been avoiding me for days, but today, I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. Guilt. He was beginning to understand the depth of what he had done. "Mom," he started, his voice softer than it had been before. "I think we need to talk. Really talk." I looked at him, taking in the sight of the son I had raised, the son I had loved. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the anger that had consumed me for weeks. Instead, I felt a sadness. I was tired of fighting, tired of being the one who had to carry the weight of all the unresolved emotions. But I knew I couldn't back down. Not now. Not after everything. "I've been trying to understand, Elliot," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I've been trying to make sense of all of this. And I don't know what you and Romy thought you were doing, but I can't just pretend everything is fine. You want to sell the house and I won't let you. It's not just about the property. It's about respect. It's about what I've given to this family, and what I deserve in return." He looked at me, his brow furrowing. "Mom, I never meant for it to get to this point," he said. "I never wanted to hurt you. But Romy and we've been struggling. We're trying to make our own way, to move forward." "Moving forward doesn't mean leaving me behind, Elliot," I replied. "You can't just erase me from your life. You don't get to do that. I'm still your mother. I'm still part of this family." He was quiet for a long time, and I could tell he was processing my words. For a moment it felt like we were both stuck in the same moment, both trying to figure out how to move forward. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that he truly didn't understand the pain he had caused me. But I also knew that some things couldn't be undone. The damage had been done. And yet, here we were trying to fix it. "I don't know what to say, Mom," Elliot said, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't realize how much I hurt you." I could see the sincerity in his eyes, but I also knew it wasn't enough. I couldn't just forgive him without seeing some real change. "Words aren't enough anymore, Elliot," I said. "You've hurt me and you've hurt this family. If you really want to make things right, you have to show me. You have to show me that you're willing to fight for what's important, for the things that matter. This house is a symbol of everything we've been through, everything we've built. And I'm not letting you take it from me." There was a long silence before he nodded. "Okay, Mom. I'll do what I can to fix this. I promise." I didn't know if I believed him, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe we could fix this. Maybe there was still a chance for us. But even if there wasn't, I knew one thing for sure. I had fought for myself. And that, at least, was something I could be proud of. I had made my choice and there was no turning back now. Elliot had promised to fix things, but I wasn't sure what that meant. Promises had been made before, and they had been broken just as quickly. But something in his eyes told me that he wasn't giving up this time. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe it was just the realization of what had been lost, but I could see a change in him. I wasn't going to hold my breath, though. I had been let down too many times to expect anything other than more disappointment. But still, there was a part of me that wanted to believe. I had spent so many years doing everything for him, for the family. I had loved them unconditionally, and for once I wanted to feel that same love in return. Days passed, and for the first time in a long time, things felt a little different. Elliot started coming around more often. He would call, checking in on me, making sure I was okay. It wasn't much, but it was something. I could feel the effort he was putting in, and that was more than I had gotten in months. Romy, however, remained silent. She avoided me completely, as if she couldn't bear to face what had happened. I knew she was angry, but I couldn't understand why. She had been the one to push me away, the one to tell me to leave, and now she was the one who was acting like she was the victim. It was frustrating to say the least, but I wasn't going to let her treatment of me define how I felt. I had done everything I could to build a relationship with her. I had tried to be kind, to be understanding, but at this point it wasn't up to me anymore. It was up to her to decide what kind of relationship she wanted to have with me. It was a painful realization, but I couldn't keep chasing after something that wasn't coming back. I had to let go. The more I focused on what I could control, my own life, my own future, the more I felt a sense of peace. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I started spending more time doing things for myself, taking care of my health, doing things I enjoyed. I had spent so many years putting others first that I had forgotten what it felt like to take care of myself. And it felt good. I began to reclaim the parts of me that had been buried under years of sacrifice. I spent afternoons gardening, taking long walks through the neighborhood, enjoying the solitude. I started reading again, something I hadn't done in years. And little by little, I began to remember who I was outside of being a mother, a wife, a grandmother. I was Loretta, and that was enough. One afternoon, as I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, I saw Elliot pull into the driveway. For a moment, I wondered if he had come to ask for something or if he had come to apologize. But when he walked up to the door, he simply smiled at me. His eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time, sincerity. "Mom, can we talk?" he asked gently. I nodded, motioning for him to sit. I didn't know what he was going to say, but I knew it was time to listen. He sat down across from me, and for a moment there was silence. It wasn't uncomfortable, though. It was just the kind of silence that filled the space between two people who were finally seeing each other again. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," Elliot began. "I've realized that I haven't been the son you deserved. I've been selfish, focused on my own life and not really paying attention to you or how you've been feeling. And I'm sorry. I should have been there for you." His words hit me harder than I expected. They weren't just empty apologies. They felt real, like he had finally understood. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked at him, taking in the sincerity of his expression. After a moment I spoke softly. "Elliot, it's not just about the house. It's not just about what's happened with you and Romy. It's about respect. It's about the years I spent giving everything for this family, and not once did I feel like anyone cared enough to really see me, to understand how much it hurt to be pushed aside. But I'm not going to live like that anymore. I'm not going to chase after something that doesn't want me." He nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. "I get it now, Mom," he said quietly. "I really do. I can't change the past, but I can start being better. I want to be better. And I want to make things right with you." For the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was a start. I wasn't sure where things would go from here, but for the first time, I felt like we were moving in the right direction. "Thank you," I said, my voice shaky. "Thank you for saying that." We sat there in silence for a while longer, but it wasn't the uncomfortable silence from before. It was a quiet kind of peace, a peace I hadn't felt in years. When Elliot finally stood up to leave, he hugged me, genuine, heartfelt. And for the first time in so long, I felt like I was holding my son again, the son I had lost along the way. I didn't know if everything would be fixed, but in that moment, I knew I wasn't alone. And that was enough for me.